The event we're going to go through today is the one called ranch riding, which is something that is still relatively new, but has become a highly popular event. So the purpose of the ranch riding class is really to show the versatility, attitude, and movement of a working horse. It kind of is out there to the class was designed to help stimulate the horse working outside the confines of the arena, basically on a ranch. So you're really kind of looking for a horse that has some forward movement, kind of a working speed that's under control. It's not really one that is supposed to be, overly excessively fast, but that is forward moving so he would get the job done. So a lot that we are going to focus on the class are that horse's manners, how responsive he is, the quality of movement. We'll look a lot at transitions, brokenness, and those different kinds of things when you're looking at the ideal for a ranch riding horse. So remember, it's supposed to emulate some of those horses that we have seen out there working on a ranch. At times, some of the patterns might include some things with cattle, basically really kind of moving around pens of cattle because it should not be a deterrent from those horses. And also, as you see one here that's just broke and forward moving, but not overly fast without control. These are some neat pictures that I found that were published in Horse and Rider magazine in January of 2018, and I think they do kind of some pretty nice illustrations of showing some of the differences between a horse that competing in the ranch riding class versus a reining class, and we do have several horses that do compete in both. But here you can see this horse here is more running in circles in a reining mode. He's a little bit more bridled up and those types of things, where this is a horse basically at the extended trot, kind of with a little bit different kind of frame that we're looking for in a ranch riding horse, with his head is up just a little bit, but he's certainly moving forward. Down here also, when we stop, naturally our reiners, we want them to slide, bury their haunches, and perform as what this horse is doing. Our ranch riding horse, we're not really looking for a sliding stop. We want a very collected, controlled type of stop, and so this is a good illustration of a horse doing a nice stop, the same horse doing a nice stop, but more for ranch riding purposes rather than than performing in a reining class. So basically, class requirements, it's again a scored class. It's going to be scored very similar on the lines of our reining, Western riding, trail, those types of things, where we do have it on a range of 0 to 100 with 70 being average. Our maneuver scores are going to range from -1.5 to +1.5. Similar to those other pattern classes, we do have maneuver scores, and so they will be judged on the quality of those maneuvers, and every time you'll set up a score sheet, and it might have as many as 12 maneuvers on it, and you'll always have a score for those maneuvers looking at the quality of the maneuvers. Then additionally, we will have penalties for things they do incorrectly, and I'll go through those in just a moment. Now, there are various required maneuvers, and again, different rule books will require different things, and so depending on what association you're judging for, you need to make sure that you are familiar and know what's required for whatever group that you're judging for. But pretty much standard across the board, they need to walk, trot, and lope in both directions. They need to at least do an extended trot or an extended lope at least in one direction, and stop and back. And those are generally pretty much uniformly what the required maneuvers are in a pattern. Then there are always optional maneuvers, and so they could include a side pass, turns of 360 or more either direction, change of the leads that could be either simple or flying. They can go over poles at a walk, a trot, or a lope, and then other kind of maneuvers that are reasonable for a ranch horse, and I've seen a variety of different things of those. There are patterns in the various rule books. However, show management and judges are free to use different patterns, providing that they do meet the requirements of the class. So remember the emphasis on forward movement, nice free-flowing gaits with good ground covering strides. But again, it's not a race. It should not be overly fast and out of control. There's not a time limit on it, and similar to our other pattern classes. If a class does have logs in it, it's recommended that you use natural logs. It's not required because sometimes a group doesn't have access to natural logs, but that's what's really suggested. Some other things with judging this class that are different than others is remember that at the extended trot, it is very acceptable but not required for the exhibitors to post. Also, it is acceptable for them to touch or hold the saddle horn, and you'll see this as they either stand for the trot or go into the extended trot or the extended lope. Oftentimes you'll see exhibitors do some of those kinds of things. So here's just a couple of the sample patterns that you'll find. I think these are taken out of the quarter horse rulebook, but you'll see different ones. Again, most of the rule books will have patterns within them, but you are free to design your own, and some show management will do so. But this is just pattern 1, and I'll just kind of walk you through it. As far as it's going to stop over here with or start over here with your walk, then our extended trot. Here's our 360 to the left, a collected lope, a change of leads here, another collected lope, then into the extended lope, back to a collected lope with an extended trot, and then into a walk over the poles and stop and back. Just for demonstration purposes, here's a couple more of the patterns. Again, the thing to remember too is that this is not a horsemanship pattern. Generally, you do not have cones out there, and so it pretty much is up to the exhibitors to use the arena to show their horse. I would say those that are probably ride this a little bit more accurately can show their horse to the best and show the brokenness of their horse. And so you as a judge will, to me, we're not going to severely discount them if they don't do transitions in the exact location, because this is not a horsemanship class. However, as the competition gets a little bit more stiff, those that do things a little bit more accurately, to me, for my purposes, will get a little bit higher maneuver score than those that are less efficient or less accurate. As far as apparel and equipment, you really do need to pay attention to this. So these are some things that are specific for this class, is that there's no hoof black. Again, you have to remember some associations might vary with these to some degree, and some of the youth associations kind of vary some of these a little bit. But again, there's no hoof black, no braided or banded manes or tail extensions. Trimming and inside the ears is discouraged doesn't mean that they cannot. They can trim the bridle path, fetlocks, and excessive long hair. That's okay. Excessive silver on a bridle and saddle is discouraged. It's not that they cannot have it, because realizing some individuals that's the only piece of equipment that they have, but would rather it not be overly excessive, super covered with silver. A breast collar and a rear cinch is recommended or suggested, but again, it's not required. So here's just a couple pictures that I threw together to kind of just show you the turnout pretty much at some of the upper level shows of one competing in ranch riding at a high level and one competing in horsemanship. Because here we've got our forward moving horse, but we have a ranch saddle. This one does have a breast collar, back rear cinch with it, and kind of more working kind of tack, and same thing with her turnout as far as a collared shirt, the chaps and that. Our horsemanship riders, remember, they're going to be turned out just a little bit different, with more silver and things on their equipment, more bling and stuff with their turnout, and those kinds of things. And just some things to note as far as how folks should turn out with the two difference of the classes. Okay, so back real quick to the penalties. We do have 1, 3, 5, and 0 penalties, or 0 meaning that they're considered off pattern. So remember, we'll do a maneuver score for each time that a horse does a maneuver, and the penalties will only be assessed if a horse does something incorrectly. So some of these you'll find similar to some of our other events, and some of these are going to be unique to the ranch riding class. So 1-point penalties are if they're too slow, and that's per gait. And so if they're very slow at the jog and very slow at the lope, you could dock them 1-point penalty for each of those different gaits. If they're over bridled, kind of behind the bridle in that's another 1-pointer. Out of frame, you have to kind of judgment on that one if their head is way up and no break at the pommel. Those types of things are 1-point penalties. Also, a break of gait at a walk or jog for up to 2 strides is also going to be a 1-point penalty, and that one is similar to what we see in many of our other pattern classes. Moving on to the 3-pointers, 3-point penalties. Again, this is similar to the other classes as far as break a gait at a walk or jog for more than 2 strides, a break a gait at the lope, or out of lead. Those are very much what we have in many of our other classes. Draped reins, and so you can have them going on a soft rein. As you look here, that's kind of just a little bit of slack, but this would not be considered a drape of rein. Okay. Out of lead or cross cantering for more than 2 strides when changing leads is going to be a 3-point penalty. We do have some patterns that just have a simple lead change, so if they trot more than 3 strides in a simple lead change, that will be considered a 3-point penalty. And then if they severely disturb any obstacle, commonly we have poles out there. You might have, depending on how it's set up, some additional types of things. So our 5-point penalties are pretty much standard across most of our events as far as their blatant disobediences, as a kick, a bite, a rear, a buck, and each time that they refuse. And we do run into this when we have the logs or maybe pens of cattle and things like that. So those are pretty much standard across most of our other events. We do have a 10-point penalty in ranch riding. It's basically looking at an unnatural ranch horse appearance, and a big one that they have addressed is that, a tail that's obviously and consistently carried in an unnatural manner across every maneuver. So that would be a one-time 10-point penalty. Okay, then we do have a few things that horses would be placed below horses performing all maneuvers, and so we're not technically taking them off pattern, but if they eliminate a maneuver or incomplete a maneuver, do not finish a maneuver, you're going to give them a score and circle that, and all of those horses are going to be placed below ones that do not do those types of things. Zero score, illegal equipment, which does include some of our grooming things of the hoof black, the braided or banded manes, tail extensions. Those are all considered illegal equipment and would receive a score of 0. Abuse, disobedience, lameness, again, pretty standard across many of the other classes. Now, the thing to remember in ranch riding is that we do not have specific penalties for things that you would normally see in trail or western riding or even reining, as far as nicks and hits on the logs, over under spins. Those are not specific penalties which you have in other classes. However, as a judge, you can lower their maneuver score to some degree if they are doing some of those kinds of things, but there's not going to be specific penalties as you see in other classes. So to sum it up, remember the purpose of the class, and it's really to measure the ability of a horse to be a pleasure to ride while being used on means of conveyance on performing one ranch task to another. Okay, so we're looking for that horse that has a lot of versatility. He's got a good positive attitude. He's got the movement of a working ranch horse that would be ridden outside of the arena. It's become an extremely popular class and one that's really been evolving, and I think most individuals now, as they judge it, can really appreciate those happy forward moving kind of horses and keep remembering what the overall purpose of the class is.